Please welcome Mark Russell from MediaKind.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. My name is Mark Russell. I am from a company called MediaKind, the CTO actually. And we're a technology vendor, media technology vendor, primarily software, but we do have quite a bit of hardware in the products that we make. We're in sort of everything from the foundation layer of how you acquire signals and transform them and deliver them to building user experiences on top of them. And we're on much of the same journey that Warren was speaking about this morning, but from a bit of a different perspective. We're a technology vendor, so we're sort of struggling with this transition in the industry to where, gee, we actually came from the, well, however many nines you wanna count, providing head-end equipment and scale play out of content and user experiences that were primarily meant to go to set-top boxes in the main screen, and really sort of servicing TV as we sort of knew it and loved it back in the Gunsmoke days, or whatever show you would want to reflect on. But as we move forward, we really had to kind of step back and take much the same look that a service provider would have to take and say, gee, what is this industry, and where should we invest our precious R&D dollars, and what is really sort of the future for us? This is our first time as a technology vendor at streaming media. We're a sponsor of this show, and that's as we step back and we look at the future, we thought, well, look, really the world is transforming, and we want to make technologies that are malleable enough to allow the world to transform. And I'll talk a bit about some of our thoughts on how that works. And so I'm not going to repeat a lot of the statistics that Warren said, that he did a very excellent setup of really sort of the state of the industry, and it's one that we've been tracking very, very, very closely. But if we look at TV is becoming a streaming entity. I'm touching this in some odd way. Streaming is becoming TV is becoming, pay TV is becoming streaming TV. Streaming TV is sort of converging in some odd way with pay TV. We're not really sure exactly, in the end of the day, how that's going to stabilize into a growth a scenario, but we do believe that many of the things that Warren was talking about is really going to be good pointers to the future. You want to have a lot of flexibility in the content that you offer. Your subscribers, you want to know a lot about them. You want to know how to engage them. You want to monetize around that with advertising. And we really want to make the technology that makes that very easy to do. It's something that excites us and really is the sort of the drive that we have with our company. This is a phenomenon that is not just pay TV specifically. We have about half of our business is with broadcasters and cable nets and media people who deliver content to consumers in some form, either directly or over the air. Or you can name all the ways that pay TV works, or that TV works. We're seeing this phenomenon with broadcasters as well, where they have a desire to take their content directly to consumers. So now you have this sort of interesting kind of polarity between aggregation and providing a package service, and content providers doing something unique that they can offer consumers and get experiences directly to them. So it's a world that's in a lot of flux. It's happening globally. Our business is global, so we see this literally in every country in the world. We see this phenomenon plays out in a little bit differently in China than it might in the United States, but the fundamentals are basically the same. So as we step back and look at it, like all of us who are in this industry have to be relevant in this era, or someone else will be and you won't be around. And so as we think about the future, we've really kind of locked on a couple of things that we think are very foundational for us as a technology provider. And the first thing is, the underpinnings of what TV and media and entertainment video is really taken on quite a shift. And that inevitably comes into play with adaptive bitrate technologies and things that I'm sure many of you in the audience know a whole lot about. But as we look at it, that's a technology foundation that was built for one kind of use case, for delivering basically files over the internet. And now we need to adapt that to live TV and to TV that can service you both as you're wandering around out in Starbucks and in airports and wherever it is you happen to want to catch TV, but also in your home. Our thought is that that's still kind of a favored place. You still will want to have kind of a very high engaged and very high quality experience when you're watching that TV on the wall. That's not going away. Bundles may be different, lots of things may be different, but we think that desire to have distinction there remains the same. So we're putting a lot of thought into how to get that same quality of experience that allows that TV to be, or that media to basically go everywhere, but have the type of quality people expect when they really desire it, when they're watching Game of Thrones or something that's a very high engagement kind of thing. The other thing that has seeped into our consciousness over the last 5 years is the cloud. And I'll kind of give a bit of a breakdown of framing of what cloud means to us as a technology provider. Really, what we should think of when we think of cloud and cloud-native technologies, we should think of flexibility. We should think of the ability to hit massive scale at price points and cost points that were just unimaginable when you're building out sort of bespoke brick and mortar type of type of facilities. So this is an era that these two things coming together give us a way to approach our portfolio and our investments and the things that we do for our customers in a very, very different way. And so I'll just kind of give sorry for the eye chart here, but I'll just give a sense of how we think about this from a kind of what I would think of as a modern head end. All in public cloud. This is something that we're doing today in a number of different guises. And the idea here is, as we start to peel apart functionality that adds value in the delivery chain, you can containerize that. It's a very intriguing thing as a technologist. You can sort of take things that were meant for one purpose and start to, by composition, use them for other things without having to reinvest in that component. So we can think of things like encoders and recorders and packagers and streamers and origin functions as containerized components. We orchestrate them, we automatically orchestrate them. We put an analytics framework around this so that that everything that's happening inside this entity and all of the interfaces that go into it are captured, and that is where you get the type of rich data that you need to really sort of gauge engagement, quality of experience. You start to be able to build a layer that gets you to the ability to say, well, hey, look, the cloud's not 5 nines, but I can, because I can spin things up really fast and I can back them up quickly and it's cheap to do that, I can mimic what a 5 nines experience would have been, and I can mimic a high quality delivery by using those that approach. We also think that it's important to do this in this era. So the first thing was sort of relearning. Well, what does it mean, to be a technology provider in this space? And if we think about this particular example here, this allows us to spin channels up and tear them down on demand within seconds, on the fly almost. It allows us to offer this as a service, so you wouldn't necessarily have to buy your own head end if you didn't want to. We live in a world when I think one of the things that Warren said that was absolutely true. This is an industry that is very slow to change. And so we have to live with some customers who have a high desire to say, well, I want to outsource everything now, and then we have a whole group of others who are like, well, I'm not so sure. I may want to dip my toe in the water. I may only have certain pieces of my business that I want to operate in this way. So we want to be able to react to that and enable that. And then, of course, we have a legacy business that operates in sort of the stock standard way. So we provide a lot of services that offer transition. The essential thing, though, is allowing operators, service providers to experiment with their service offerings without having to make a lot of capital investment. And that is probably the number one benefit or attribute of the cloud that we think brings in this era, is that flexibility, that ability to do things differently, to understand more about what's going on in terms of how people interact with different parts of the technology stack, and to aggregate that up into sort of a holistic notion of what this customer is. I should say also that embedded in this is an adaptive bitrate workflow based on really sort of playlist manipulation, if you like. And that allows you to basically insert ads or do blackouts or all kinds of things that used to be really hard in kind of the old world in a relatively straightforward fashion. And you're using the same kind of workflow components over and over again. So it makes this a very unique and flexible way to go. So as we step back and say, well, all right, well, what things are we layering into this, to make this world as close to, a broadcast quality display as possible. We think of things like, quality of the experience, latency, scalability of this, doing this. If we're going to do this as a service, then a lot of things that used to be the cost of the service provider is now our COGS. So we have to worry about it as much as they do. And so as we think about visual quality, again, because we deal both with operators and with the pure OTT aspects of their service, we sort of think in two sort of chunks. If we're in the pure OTT world, we're doing a lot of work with CMAF and other technologies to sort of narrow the latencies to the point where you get a pretty darn good experience, and one that'll get you probably as close as you're going to get to to a live experience as possible. But when you switch over and you're on the kind of the last mile, the to the home, part of the experience, then the operator has a lot more control over things like congestion and things that are going to help sort of narrow that signal. So we think we can take one workflow and make it appropriate to both delivery mechanisms and actually improve both of them quite a bit. Similarly, with scalability, we're doing quite a bit of work with how we transmit information so that it's cached properly, picked up properly, and able to be put out at the type of scale that Warren was talking about. If you're doing a national service, you need quite a bit of scale in that display. But similarly, if you're talking about the home, well, then there are ways to take that same adaptive bitrate workflow and multicast them into the home, and that gives you a very nice kind of balance between your OTT and your kind of your in-home service. But it's a streaming service. It's streaming first and foremost. It's going to go to the big screen TV. It's going to go to all of your devices. It's going to wander around in the wild with you. That's really sort of the concept behind this. So kind of in closing, we're super happy to be at streaming media as a bit of a first time coming here. So we'll still go to NAB, and we'll still go to IBC, and we'll still go to all of the sort of stock standard shows that you would go in broadcast. But really adding streaming and having streaming be the sort of the first thought in our head as we think about our technologies and our business is something that we're really happy to do. So thank you very much.